The night of the Blood Moon Festival had finally arrived, and for the people of Mooncrest Pack, it was more than a celebration. It was a promise that another year of peace had been granted by the Moon Goddess. From the highest cliffs overlooking the valley to the smallest cottages hidden among the pines, silver lanterns swayed gently in the cool evening breeze. Their soft light reflected off crystal streams that wound through the forest like ribbons of liquid moonlight. Everywhere, laughter echoed between the ancient trees. Children chased one another through flower-covered paths, while elders exchanged stories of legendary alphas who had defended the pack centuries before. Travelers from distant territories filled every corner of the village. Merchants displayed handcrafted weapons engraved with glowing runes, jewelers offered necklaces carved from moonstone, and musicians played melodies so beautiful that even the wolves resting near the fires lifted their heads to listen. Above everything hung an enormous crimson moon, larger than anyone could remember seeing in years. Many whispered that such a moon always appeared before destiny changed someone's life forever. No one knew how true those whispers would become. At the center of the celebration stood Mooncrest Hall, an enormous fortress carved directly into the mountain itself. Massive white stone pillars supported balconies draped with silver banners bearing the crest of the Ashwin family, a wolf standing beneath a crescent moon. Hundreds of guests climbed the marble steps toward the grand entrance, where warriors in polished black armor welcomed visiting alphas and their families. Inside the highest balcony of the fortress stood Vaelora Ashwin. At 23 years old, she was already admired throughout every neighboring territory. Some praised her intelligence. Others admired her courage after hearing stories of how she had once rescued 2 wolf pups trapped beneath a collapsing cliff during a violent storm. Yet despite the praise that followed her wherever she went, Vaelora never sought attention. She preferred silence. She preferred the forest. She preferred freedom. Tonight, however, freedom felt impossibly far away. She rested both hands on the cold stone railing and stared across the valley where thousands celebrated beneath floating lanterns. The view was breathtaking, but she barely noticed it. Her thoughts were trapped elsewhere. Behind her, servants carefully adjusted the silver cloak resting over her shoulders. Every thread had been embroidered by hand. Tiny moonstones sparkled along its edges, making it shimmer beneath the crimson moonlight. "It fits perfectly, Lady Vaelora," one servant said with a proud smile. Another stepped forward, carrying a delicate silver circlet. "And the Alpha requested that you wear this during tonight's announcement." Vaelora accepted the circlet politely, but instead of placing it on her head, she held it in her hands. It felt surprisingly heavy, not because of its weight, because of what it represented. A voice interrupted the silence. "You're trying to disappear again." Vaelora turned and saw Mireia Thorn walking toward her with 2 crystal cups filled with chilled moonberry nectar. Mireia's warm smile had always been able to brighten even the darkest days. "You've been hiding on this balcony for nearly an hour," Mireia teased. "I was beginning to think you climbed over the railing." Vaelora laughed softly. "I considered it." Mireia handed her one of the drinks before leaning against the railing beside her. "You frightened half the servants. They think you're nervous." "I am." "Nervous? Nervous?" Vaelora looked toward the valley again. "No, I'm trapped." Mireia's smile slowly faded. Neither of them needed to say the reason aloud. Everyone already knew. Tonight, Alpha Cedric would announce Vaelora's engagement to Rowan Blackmore, heir to the Northern Blackmore Pack. The marriage had been negotiated for nearly 2 years. It would unite powerful territories. strengthen military alliances, secure trade routes, prevent future wars. Everyone called it the perfect political union. Everyone except the woman expected to live it. "You still have time to speak with your father," Mireia said gently. Vaelora shook her head. "My father has spent his entire life protecting Mooncrest. He believes this marriage will protect thousands more. And what about protecting you?" Vaelora remained silent. After several moments, she finally whispered, "Leaders don't always have the luxury of choosing happiness." Mireia sighed. "You're his daughter before you're his political alliance. I wish he remembered that." And before either woman could continue, the great ceremonial bells echoed across the fortress. Guests slowly gathered below the enormous platform built for the evening's announcements. Visiting Alphas stood proudly beside their families. Warriors formed perfect lines around the square. The musicians stopped playing. Every conversation faded into silence. At the center of the platform appeared Alpha Cedric Ashwin. Even after 25 years as Alpha, his presence commanded immediate respect. His broad shoulders carried the ceremonial wolf cloak passed down through generations, while silver streaks in his dark hair reflected decades of leadership rather than age. He surveyed the enormous gathering with calm confidence. "My friends," he began, his deep voice carrying effortlessly across the valley, "tonight we celebrate peace. We celebrate unity. And above all, we celebrate family." Thunderous applause erupted. Vaelora watched from above, forcing herself to smile whenever someone looked toward her. Inside, her heart felt strangely empty. Cedric continued speaking about prosperity, cooperation among neighboring packs, and the importance of preserving traditions. Every sentence moved the ceremony closer to the announcement Vaelora dreaded. Then, a lone raven flew overhead. Its sharp cry echoed unnaturally across the valley. Several elders exchanged uneasy glances. One elderly woman quietly whispered, "A raven beneath a blood moon. That isn't a blessing. It's a warning." Most people ignored her. The celebration continued, but somewhere beyond the festival, deep inside the ancient forest, another man was fighting for his life. Branches whipped across Soren Vea's face as he stumbled through the darkness. His breathing burned inside his lungs. Every muscle screamed with exhaustion. Blood dripped steadily from a deep wound across his shoulder, leaving crimson marks on fallen leaves behind him. He had been running for 3 days. 3 days without proper sleep. 3 days without real food. 3 days with the same relentless hunters never far behind. He could already hear them. Their wolves moved through the forest with terrifying precision. They weren't ordinary bounty hunters. They were trained Alpha Guard. The best. Which meant one thing. His secret had nearly been discovered. Soren pressed one hand against the bleeding wound before forcing himself over another fallen tree. His vision blurred. His legs nearly gave out beneath him. Not now. Not after coming this far. He reached inside his torn coat and briefly touched the strange silver pendant hidden beneath his shirt. It pulsed with faint warmth, almost as if it were alive. "Just a little farther," he whispered to himself. "If I can reach the valley." Suddenly, a crossbow bolt slammed into the tree, inches from his head. Another struck the ground beside him. "He's slowing down." "There." "Don't let him escape." Voices echoed through the forest. Soren cursed under his breath before forcing himself forward again. Behind him, enormous wolves burst through dense undergrowth with frightening speed. Their glowing eyes reflected the crimson moonlight. Their growls shook the forest itself. One wolf lunged. Soren rolled beneath its jaws, just before massive teeth snapped shut where his neck had been. He grabbed a fallen branch and struck the animal across its muzzle before sprinting downhill. The slope grew steeper. Loose stones rolled beneath his boots. Ahead, through the trees, he saw lights, hundreds of them. A village, a festival, Mooncrest Pack. His expression changed instantly. No, he hadn't meant to come this close. Sacred Pack territory was the last place he wanted to enter. If the guards found him there, they would kill him before asking questions. But behind him, the hunters were gaining. He had no choice. Taking one desperate breath, Soren ran toward the lights, unaware that every step was carrying him closer to the woman whose fate had already begun upon. The first rays of dawn slowly crept through the towering pines surrounding Mooncrest Pack, washing the forest in soft shades of gold and silver. Birds welcomed the new morning with cheerful songs, and the valley appeared as peaceful as it had every day for generations. But peace was an illusion. Only a few hours had passed since the Blood Moon Festival descended into chaos. The music had vanished. The laughter had been replaced by frightened whispers, and every warrior in Mooncrest Pack had spent the remainder of the night searching for two missing people, a rogue and the Alpha's daughter. Although Vaelora had returned safely before sunrise, she hadn't spoken a single word about what had happened inside the forest. Not to her father, not to the council, not even to Mireia. She simply claimed she had become separated during the confusion. No one believed her, yet no one could prove otherwise. Standing inside her bedroom, Vaelora gazed through the tall windows overlooking the endless forest. The torn strip of silver fabric missing from her ceremonial cloak had been carefully hidden inside a wooden chest beneath her bed. It still carried traces of dried blood. His blood. She had told herself countless times that helping the stranger had only been an act of compassion. Nothing more. Yet she couldn't forget his face, the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion in his voice, and above all, his final warning: the greatest monster isn't outside your walls. He's sitting on your father's throne. The words echoed endlessly inside her mind. Her father wasn't a monster. He couldn't be. Alpha Cedric had dedicated his entire life to protecting Mooncrest. He had rescued starving villages during harsh winters, negotiated peace between rival packs, and personally fought beside his warriors during every border conflict. The entire region respected him. So why had Soren said those words? Was he lying? Or had he mistaken someone else? A knock interrupted her thoughts. Lady Vaelora? Mireia quietly entered the room carrying breakfast. You haven't eaten since yesterday. I'm not hungry. You always say that when something is troubling you. Vaelora forced a small smile. I'm simply tired. Mireia studied her friend carefully. You've never been good at hiding your thoughts. After several seconds of silence, she finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. What really happened in the forest? Vaelora looked away. I found him. The rogue? Yes. Did he attack you? No. Threaten you? No. Then why did you protect him? Vaelora hesitated. I don't know. The answer surprised even herself. She wasn't lying. She truly didn't know. Every instinct had simply told her the stranger wasn't evil. Mireia slowly sat beside her. You know the council wants him executed. I know. They're saying he's responsible for attacking the festival. He wasn't. Vaelora answered so quickly that Mireia blinked. You sound certain. I saw his wounds. He wasn't hunting anyone. He was being hunted. Mireia frowned. Then who was chasing him? Vaelora remembered the dozens of armored warriors emerging from the trees. They had looked disciplined, organized, almost military, not ordinary bounty hunters. Before she could answer, another knock echoed through the chamber. A palace guard entered and bowed. Lady Vaelora, Alpha Cedric requests your presence immediately. Inside the great council chamber, every seat was occupied. Visiting Alphas remained in Mooncrest after the disrupted festival, each demanding answers about the mysterious rogue. Maps covered the massive stone table. Scouts moved miniature wolf figurines across the forests, while commanders reported search patterns. Alpha Cedric stood at the head of the table. The moment Vaelora entered, every conversation stopped. My daughter. His voice remained calm. Sit. She obeyed. One commander immediately pointed toward the western forest. We've searched nearly 40 miles. No trace. Another added. Several patrols discovered dead horses. Not ours. The rogue killed them? No. They belonged to the men chasing him. The room became quiet. Alpha Cedric folded his arms. So someone else entered Mooncrest territory before the rogue. The commander nodded. It appears so. An elderly council member spoke next. Could they belong to Black Fang mercenaries? Another shook his head. Their armor doesn't match. Then whose? No one answered. For the first time since becoming Alpha, Cedric looked uncertain. Far beyond Mooncrest territory, hidden beneath the roots of a mountain older than recorded history. Soren slowly opened his eyes. Pain exploded through his shoulder. He winced as warm herbal smoke drifted through the underground chamber. You finally woke. The gentle voice belonged to an old man seated beside a stone fire. His silver beard reached nearly to his waist. Ancient tattoos covered both hands. His sharp amber eyes carried centuries of wisdom. Eldric, Soren whispered. I thought they'd found you. They nearly did. The old historian smiled faintly. They're becoming faster. They're becoming desperate. Soren carefully sat upright. They know. Not everything. But enough. Eldric reached toward a wooden shelf and retrieved an old leather book. Its pages looked impossibly ancient. The High Alpha has begun searching every forgotten archive. He believes the legends are true. Soren closed his eyes. Then we don't have much time. No, we don't. The old man quietly unwrapped the blood-stained bandages covering Soren's shoulder. Instead of ordinary blood, silver light shimmered beneath the healing wound. Tiny glowing veins spread beneath his skin like flowing moonlight. Anyone seeing them would immediately realize Soren wasn't an ordinary werewolf. Eldric sighed. You exposed yourself. I had no choice. You entered Mooncrest. I was dying. The old man continued treating the wound. Did anyone notice? Soren thought carefully. Then his expression changed. The Alpha's daughter. What about her? She saved me. Eldric stopped moving. The daughter of Cedric Ashwin. Soren nodded. She saw the wound, but I don't think she noticed. The old historian looked deeply troubled. The Ashwin bloodline. What is it? They were once sworn protectors. Soren frowned. Protectors of what? Eldrick looked toward the ancient symbols carved across the cave walls. Not what. Who? Before Soren could ask another question, a deep horn echoed through the mountain tunnels. One, then another. Eldrick's face immediately lost all color. They found us. Soren reached for his sword. Already? They've tracked your blood. The old historian grabbed the ancient leather book and extinguished the fire. We leave now. As they hurried deeper into the hidden tunnels, neither of them noticed that a single drop of Soren's glowing silver blood had fallen onto the stone floor. The blood touched an ancient symbol carved thousands of years earlier. Instantly, the entire symbol ignited with brilliant silver light. Deep beneath the mountain, something ancient awakened. And far away in Mooncrest, Vaelora suddenly felt an unfamiliar pulse race through the crescent-shaped birthmark hidden beneath her shoulder. She gasped and pressed a hand against it. For the first time in her life, the mark was glowing. The hidden tunnels beneath the Elder Mountains had remained untouched for nearly 1,000 years. Massive stone pillars, carved with wolves bowing beneath a crescent moon, stretched endlessly into the darkness. Strange silver crystals embedded in the ceiling cast a faint glow, illuminating symbols so ancient that even the oldest historians no longer understood their meaning. Soren and Eldrick hurried through the winding passageways without speaking. Behind them, distant echoes of armored footsteps bounced through the tunnels. "They're closer than I expected," Soren said, gripping the hilt of his sword. Eldrick didn't slow down. "They're not following your footprints. They're following your blood." Soren looked at the healing wound on his shoulder. "I thought the herbs concealed my scent." "They hide the scent from wolves, but not from those carrying the hunter sigils." The old historian finally stopped before an enormous circular stone door. At its center rested an ancient emblem, a wolf surrounded by 12 crescent moons. Eldrick placed both hands against the carving. Nothing happened. He turned toward Soren. "It won't open for me." Soren frowned. "It never has." "Because it isn't waiting for me. It's waiting for you." Reluctantly, Soren stepped forward. The moment his fingertips touched the cold stone, a single drop of silver blood escaped from his healing wound and landed on the ancient emblem. The mountain trembled. Deep rumbling echoed through the tunnels as thousands of years of dust drifted from the ceiling. Ancient gears hidden inside the rock slowly began turning. The massive door opened. A chamber unlike anything Soren had ever imagined appeared before them. It wasn't a treasure room. It wasn't an armory. It was a library. Shelves carved directly into the mountain stretched higher than palace towers. Thousands of scrolls, stone tablets, crystal records, and leather-bound books filled every wall. Floating spheres of silver light drifted silently through the air, illuminating statues of wolves standing beside humans. Not above them. Soren stared in disbelief. "I thought every record from the First Age had been destroyed." Eldrick smiled sadly. "That's exactly what the High Alphas wanted the world to believe." He walked toward the center of the chamber, where an enormous crystal rested upon a stone pedestal. Inside the crystal floated moving images, as though memories had been trapped within it. "This," Eldrick whispered, "is the Chronicle Crystal. It remembers what history tried to erase." Soren stepped closer. The crystal suddenly awakened. Silver light filled the chamber. Scenes from the distant past unfolded before his eyes. He saw the first werewolves, not kings or conquerors, but guardians living alongside ordinary people. There were no thrones, no crowns, no servants kneeling before alphas. Every pack stood as equals. Men and women fought side by side. Leadership was earned, never inherited. "What is this?" Soren whispered. "The truth." Eldric's voice echoed through the chamber. "The history every alpha has hidden for nearly 1,000 years." The crystal changed again. A terrible war appeared. Cities burned. Entire forests were reduced to ash. Werewolves fought one another instead of protecting humanity. To end the endless bloodshed, 12 leaders gathered beneath the first moon temple. They created an artifact unlike anything the world had ever seen. A glowing sphere of silver energy suspended above an altar. "The moon core," Eldric said quietly. "It was never created to give one alpha power. It was created to prevent anyone from taking too much." Soren looked confused. "Then why does every alpha claim authority comes from the moon goddess?" "Because that's the greatest lie ever told." The crystal revealed the final moments of the ancient gathering. The 12 founders placed a single condition upon the moon core. No ruler would ever control it alone. Its power could only remain balanced while protected by 12 guardian bloodlines. If one guardian betrayed the covenant, the artifact would reject absolute rule. The moon core wasn't a crown, Eldric explained. It was a lock, a prison. It kept ambitious rulers from enslaving every werewolf on Earth. Soren slowly understood. So if someone controls every guardian bloodline, they control the lock. And if the lock opens, the moon core becomes a weapon. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Soren asked the question haunting his thoughts. "What does that have to do with me?" Eldric walked toward another ancient mural. 12 wolves surrounded a single silver wolf whose eyes glowed brighter than the rest. At the bottom was one name, House Vaelor. Eldric placed his hand over it. "Your family wasn't simply one of the guardians. They were the first guardians. The blood of House Vaelor is the final key required to awaken the moon core." Soren felt the room spin. "My parents were murdered because they refused to surrender that key. My grandparents? The same. My sister." Eldric lowered his head. "I'm sorry." Soren clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. "So everyone I loved, they weren't killed by rogues. No, they were executed. Ordered by one man." Soren's breathing became heavier. "High Alpha Draven." Eldric nodded. "For 20 years, he has hunted every surviving guardian bloodline. 11 have already fallen. Only yours remains." A deafening crash echoed outside the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're here!" Soren shouted. Before either man could move, the stone entrance exploded inward. Elite warriors flooded the chamber. Their armor was unlike anything worn by ordinary packs. Black steel engraved with crimson wolves. Each carried weapons forged from moon silver. Their captain stepped forward slowly. "There he is, the last guardian." Soren immediately drew his sword. "You'll have to kill me." The captain smiled beneath his helmet. "Oh, we're under strict orders not to." He slowly removed a sealed parchment bearing the royal crest of the High Alpha. Our Lord requires you alive. He wishes to witness the awakening personally. The captain looked around the chamber with satisfaction. So the legends were true. The archive still exists. One warrior reached toward the chronicle crystal. Eldrick shouted, "Don't touch it!" Too late. The soldier's hand brushed the glowing surface. The crystal erupted. A wave of silver light exploded throughout the chamber. Ancient defensive magic awakened instantly. Stone wolves carved into the walls opened glowing blue eyes. The entire mountain shook violently. Massive pillars cracked. Ancient statues came to life. The guardian spirits had been asleep for nearly 1,000 years. Now, they recognized intruders. One colossal stone wolf lunged from its pedestal and crushed 3 soldiers beneath its enormous paws. Another roared with such force that armored warriors were thrown backward across the chamber. Chaos erupted. "Run!" Eldrick shouted. Soren grabbed the old historian as collapsing pillars crashed behind them. They sprinted deeper into the ancient archive while the awakened guardians battled the invading soldiers. Behind them, the captain rose from the rubble, blood running down his face. Instead of fear, he laughed. He touched the crystal before retreating. High Alpha Draven will be pleased. We've confirmed it. The last guardian has finally revealed himself. Far away, inside the obsidian fortress of the High Alpha, a raven landed on the throne's armrest. Draven Kalor unrolled the captain's message. He smiled, a slow, cold smile that never reached his eyes. So, the moon core truly exists. He rose from his throne and looked toward the crimson moon beyond the palace windows. Prepare the armies. The age of equal packs is over. When the next full moon rises, there will be only one Alpha left in this world. And for the first time in nearly 1,000 years, the countdown to the greatest war in werewolf history had officially begun. The morning after the battle beneath the Elder Mountains, a thick blanket of mist covered the forests stretching between Mooncrest and the neighboring territories. To ordinary travelers, the woods appeared peaceful, but hidden among the ancient pines. Hundreds of soldiers searched every trail, every cave, and every abandoned ruin. High Alpha Draven had only one order: find Soren Vaer alive. Every captain understood why. No one questioned the command. No one dared. Back in Mooncrest, life appeared to return to normal, but Vaelora knew better. The festival decorations had been taken down. The music had faded. The laughter had disappeared. Warriors patrolled the village day and night, and every stranger entering the territory was questioned before being allowed through the gates. The council insisted the increased security was for everyone's protection. Vaelora believed it was because someone was afraid of one wounded rogue. She stood inside the palace library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with centuries of history. Normally, she found comfort among old books, but today she searched with purpose. She pulled volume after volume from the shelves. The founding of the Great Packs, history of the Alpha Council, the sacred laws of the Moon Goddess. Every book praised the High Alpha. Every book told the same version of history. Every book described rogues as savage beasts incapable of honor. Not one mentioned a family called Vaer. Not one mentioned guardian bloodlines. It was as if they had never existed. Vaelora closed the final book with a frustrated sigh. Someone erased them. A quiet voice answered from behind. Or someone wanted you to believe they never existed. She turned. It was Eldrick. Not the old historian hidden beneath the mountains, but another man, an elderly traveling scholar who visited Mooncrest every few years to copy ancient manuscripts. His grey robes were dusty from the road, and several scrolls hung from the leather satchel over his shoulder. "You startled me," Vaelora admitted. The scholar smiled politely. "History often does." She frowned. "I've never seen you before. I prefer libraries to crowds." He glanced at the stack of history books on the table. "Searching for something?" Vaelora hesitated. "Have you ever heard of House Vaer?" The scholar's expression changed almost imperceptibly. He recovered so quickly that most people would never have noticed. An unusual question. "So you have heard the name?" "I've heard many names. Most are forgotten for a reason." Before Vaelora could press further, palace servants entered the library, announcing that Alpha Cedric required everyone's presence in the council hall. The old scholar quietly gathered his scrolls. As he walked past her, he whispered so softly that only she could hear. "Some truths survive only in the places everyone is afraid to enter." Then he disappeared into the crowded hallway. Miles away, hidden deep inside Black Hollow Forest, Soren slowly recovered inside an abandoned stone sanctuary, swallowed by vines centuries earlier. The underground archive had collapsed after the battle with the guardian spirits. Eldric had escaped with only a handful of ancient scrolls. The rest of humanity's forgotten history now lay buried beneath thousands of tons of rock. Soren sat near a small fire while the old historian carefully replaced the bandages covering his shoulder. "The wound is healing faster," Eldric observed. "It always does. The moon blood is becoming stronger." Soren looked at the silver veins faintly glowing beneath his skin. "I never asked for this blood." "No, but you were born carrying every hope the Guardians had left." Silence settled between them. Finally, Soren spoke. "I keep thinking about her." Eldric didn't look surprised. "The Alpha's daughter." Soren nodded. "She should hate me. Instead, she saved my life." She looked at me, as though she saw a person, not a criminal. The old historian chuckled. "That can be more dangerous than hatred." Soren stared into the flames. "I'll never see her again." "You sound disappointed." "It doesn't matter." "It matters more than you think." That evening, Vaelora made a decision that would change everything. She slipped out of Mooncrest after sunset, wearing a dark traveling cloak instead of royal clothing. Only Mireia knew. "You cannot keep doing this," Mireia whispered while tightening the straps on Vaelora's boots. "If your father discovers you've been leaving the territory alone, I know. He'll lock me inside the palace." "So why risk it?" Vaelora looked toward the distant forest. "Because if Soren told the truth, everything I believe is built on lies. And if he's lying, I need to know that too." Mireia sighed. "I'll cover for you until dawn. But please, come back alive." Black Hollow Forest felt different after sunset. The trees were older, the silence deeper. Moonlight barely reached the forest floor beneath the dense branches. Vaelora followed the same forgotten hunter's trail where she had last seen Soren. For nearly 2 hours, nothing happened. She almost turned back. Then, she noticed fresh footprints beside a narrow stream. Someone had passed only minutes earlier. She followed them carefully. The trail ended at the ruins of an ancient chapel hidden beneath enormous oak trees. The roof had long ago collapsed, allowing moonlight to pour into the center of the crumbling sanctuary. She stepped inside cautiously. Looking for someone? The familiar voice echoed from the shadows. Vaelora spun around. Soren stepped into the moonlight. He looked healthier than before. His shoulder remained bandaged, but he stood without difficulty. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Vaelora smiled. "I wasn't sure you'd still be alive. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I nearly didn't." Soren nodded. "That would have been the safer choice." She crossed her arms. "I've never been very interested in safe choices." For the first time, a genuine smile appeared on Soren's face. It transformed him completely. The exhaustion remained. The scars remained. But the sadness in his eyes softened. Vaelora found herself smiling back without realizing it. "So," she said, "are you finally going to tell me why half the world wants you dead?" Soren looked away. "I can't." "You don't trust me?" "I trust you more than I should." "Then why?" "Because the less you know, the safer you'll be." Vaelora stepped closer. "I've already risked my life." "You don't get to decide what's too dangerous for me." Soren met her eyes. For several long seconds, the world seemed to disappear. The wind, the forest, even the distant howl of wolves. None of it mattered. Only the space between them. Only the unspoken questions neither of them knew how to answer. Without thinking, Vaelora reached toward his injured shoulder. "Does it still hurt?" Soren looked down at her hand. Not as much. She gently adjusted the edge of the bandage. "You always pretend you're fine. You've known me for one day, and yet I'm right." He laughed quietly. "You are." Over the following weeks, the abandoned chapel became their secret meeting place. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they simply walked through the forest without speaking. Vaelora told Soren stories about growing up inside Mooncrest. He admitted he had never belonged anywhere long enough to call a place home. She taught him the names of rare forest flowers. He showed her hidden waterfalls no map had ever marked. She discovered he loved reading. He discovered she secretly hated royal ceremonies. Slowly, the distance between an alpha's daughter and a hunted rogue disappeared. One evening, rain trapped them inside the ruined chapel. Thunder rolled across the mountains while they sat beside a small fire. Vaelora looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, I've never asked your age." 26. "You?" 23. "You've survived a lot for someone only 26. Soren smiled faintly. "I had no choice." She looked into the fire. "I envy you." He blinked. "You envy me?" "You choose your own path. I've never been allowed to choose mine." Without realizing it, Soren reached across the fire and gently took her hand. "You still can." The moment their hands touched, a brilliant pulse of silver light flashed beneath Soren's skin. At the same instant, the crescent-shaped birthmark hidden beneath Vaelora's shoulder began glowing beneath her clothing. Neither of them understood what had happened. Neither noticed that the ancient carvings surrounding the ruined chapel had also begun shining with faint silver light. Far away, in the obsidian capital, High Alpha Draven suddenly looked up from the ancient map spread across his throne room. One glowing symbol had just appeared. He smiled. "So, the bond has begun." He turned toward his commanders. "Prepare the Raven Guard. We've waited 20 years. They finally found each other." Outside the palace, hundreds of black-armored riders mounted their wolves. The hunt was no longer for a single guardian. Now, It was for two hearts that had unknowingly become the greatest threat to the High Alpha's plan. The first snowfall of the season arrived without warning. Thin flakes drifted silently through the forests surrounding Mooncrest, covering every trail that Vaelora and Soren had used during their secret meetings. To most wolves, the snow marked the beginning of winter. To High Alpha Draven, it marked the beginning of the final hunt. Inside the ruined chapel, Soren stared at the ancient carvings that had glowed the moment he touched Vaelora's hand. The silver light had disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only unanswered questions. Vaelora broke the silence. "What happened?" Soren slowly shook his head. "I don't know. You've never seen that before?" "No, but I have a feeling someone else has." "Eldrick," Soren nodded. "If anyone knows the truth, it's him. Then take me to him." He immediately looked up. "No. Why not?" "Because once you meet Eldrick, there will be no turning back." Vaelora smiled faintly. "I crossed that line the night I chose to save you." For a long moment, Soren simply looked at her. He had spent years running from everyone, trusting no one, depending only on himself. Yet somehow, this stubborn Alpha's daughter had become the only person whose presence made him feel safe. Finally, he sighed. "Then tomorrow. We leave before sunrise." Meanwhile, Mooncrest Hall had become unusually quiet. Alpha Cedric stood alone in his private study, staring at an enormous map hanging across the wall. Small iron markers indicated every patrol route surrounding the territory. Something wasn't right. The rogue had entered Mooncrest, then disappeared. Yet instead of ordinary bounty hunters searching for him, unknown soldiers wearing black armor had crossed sacred borders. No neighboring Alpha had admitted sending them. Even stranger, none of the bodies recovered after the festival carried pack insignias. It was as if someone wanted the soldiers to remain anonymous. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Captain Ronan stepped inside. "My Alpha, we found something." Cedric turned immediately. "What is it?" The captain carefully placed an old arrow on the desk. Its metal tip gleamed strangely beneath the firelight. "We recovered this from the western forest." Cedric picked it up. The moment he saw the engraved symbol near its base, his expression changed completely. "No." The captain frowned. "You recognize it?" Cedric remained silent. His hand tightened around the arrow. "I haven't seen this crest in 25 years. It belongs to the Raven Guard, the High Alpha's personal soldiers." The captain's eyes widened. "You believe they entered Mooncrest without permission?" Cedric looked toward the snow-covered valley beyond the window. "I don't believe. I know." That same night, deep inside the northern mountains, Soren and Vaelora finally reached Eldrick's new hiding place. It wasn't another cave. It was an abandoned observatory built by astronomers centuries earlier. Half the circular roof had collapsed, revealing a breathtaking view of the stars above. Ancient telescopes stood frozen beneath layers of dust. Eldrick was waiting beside a fire. The moment he saw Vaelora, he slowly stood. "So, the moon finally guided you here." Vaelora frowned. "You were expecting me?" "I've been expecting you since before you were born." Those words sent a chill through the room. "What does that mean?" Eldrick motioned toward two wooden chairs. "Sit. You deserve the truth." For the next several hours, the old historian told a story that neither of them could have imagined. Nearly 1,000 years earlier, the 12 guardian bloodlines had sworn an oath before the moon goddess herself. Each family would protect one part of the moon core. None could awaken it alone. The balance between packs would survive forever. But centuries later, ambition corrupted the Alpha Council. Some rulers grew tired of sharing power. They wanted one throne, one empire, one unquestioned ruler. So they rewrote history. The Guardians became traitors. The moon core became a mythical weapon. The truth disappeared beneath generations of carefully crafted lies. Vaelora listened in stunned silence. My father, did he know? Eldrick slowly shook his head. No. Most modern alphas know only the false history. They inherited lies, just as their fathers did. So my father isn't the enemy. No, he's another victim. Soren looked toward the fire. Then Draven manipulated every alpha. For decades. Eldrick nodded. Exactly. He disappeared briefly into another room before returning with a weathered wooden chest. Its lock had long ago rusted away. This belonged to someone important. He handed it to Vaelora. Open it. Inside lay dozens of handwritten journals, carefully preserved letters. A silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon, and one beautifully painted portrait. Vaelora's breath caught. The woman in the painting looked exactly like her, only older. My mother. Eldrick smiled sadly. Lysara Ashwin. You knew her. I owed her my life. Vaelora carefully opened the first journal. The handwriting was unmistakably her mother's. The first page read, If my daughter ever reads these words, then I have failed to protect the truth. Vaelora's hands began trembling. She continued reading. The High Alpha is hunting the Guardians. Cedric still believes Draven serves the moon goddess. He doesn't know the council has already been corrupted. If I disappear, never blame your father. He was deceived before either of us realized the truth. Tears slowly filled Vaelora's eyes. Page after page revealed the same horrifying reality. Her mother had secretly worked with Eldrick. She had protected fleeing Guardian families. She had hidden ancient records beneath Mooncrest. She hadn't died from illness, as everyone had been told. She had been murdered, because she refused to reveal where the moon core was hidden. Vaelora closed the journal. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. My entire life, I've believed a lie. Far away, inside the obsidian citadel, High Alpha Draven stood before an enormous black mirror. One of his spies knelt nearby. My lord. We've located the observatory, Draven smiled. And the girl, she is with the Guardian. Excellent. The High Alpha slowly walked toward the window, overlooking thousands of soldiers gathered below. The time for secrecy has ended. He raised one hand. War horns echoed across the valley. Thousands of warriors lifted their weapons toward the sky. Tonight, we capture the last Guardian. And tomorrow, the moon core becomes mine. Before dawn, the Raven Guard surrounded the observatory from every direction. Black-armored wolves emerged silently from the snow-covered forest. Archers climbed nearby cliffs. Elite assassins sealed every escape route. Inside, Eldrick suddenly looked toward the doorway. His expression darkened. They're here. Soren was already reaching for his sword. How many? Eldrick closed his eyes briefly, listening. Too many. Vaelora looked toward the narrow windows. Hundreds of torchlights flickered through the trees. An entire army. Soren stepped toward her. You have to leave. I'm not leaving you. They'll kill you. They'll kill both of us. Then we'll fight together." For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then Soren gently rested his forehead against hers. "If anything happens, you don't get to finish that sentence." A faint smile crossed his face. "You really are impossible, and you're finally admitting it." Before either could say another word, the observatory doors exploded inward. The battle had begun. Outside, the snow-covered mountain echoed with the roar of wolves, the clash of steel, and the first thunder of a war that would decide the future of every werewolf pack. The ancient observatory shook violently as the massive wooden doors crashed inward. Splinters flew through the air. Cold wind rushed inside. One by one, black-armored warriors stepped into the circular chamber, their crimson cloaks dragging across the stone floor. Behind them, dozens more surrounded the building while archers climbed the snow-covered cliffs, ensuring no one could escape. At the front of the formation stood a tall commander, wearing armor engraved with a silver raven. His helmet concealed his face, but his voice was calm. "Lay down your weapons. The High Alpha wishes to spare unnecessary bloodshed." Soren stepped forward, placing himself between the soldiers and Vaelora. "I've heard enough lies from your master." The commander sighed. "Very well." He slowly raised his hand. "Take them." The room erupted into chaos. Steel clashed against steel. Soren moved like a storm. His sword cut through the first two soldiers before they could even react. He spun beneath another warrior's spear and struck the man's chest, sending him crashing into a stone pillar. Vaelora fought beside him with remarkable precision. Although she had been trained as an Alpha's daughter, tonight she fought like someone protecting the only family she had chosen for herself. Every strike was deliberate, every movement fearless. Eldric remained near the ancient journals, desperately gathering the surviving records into a leather satchel. "We cannot let these fall into Draven's hands," he shouted. Outside, wolves roared beneath the falling snow. The battle spread across the mountainside. Miles away, Mooncrest Pack received unexpected visitors. A lone rider arrived at the fortress, carrying a white flag. The guards immediately escorted him to Alpha Cedric. The messenger knelt. "My Alpha. I bring a letter from the High Alpha." Cedric accepted the sealed parchment. The moment he broke the wax seal, his face darkened. The letter contained only one sentence. "Your daughter stands beside the greatest traitor in history. If you value your pack, remain where you are." Captain Ronan stepped closer. "My Alpha, what are your orders?" Cedric folded the letter slowly. "My daughter has never betrayed this pack. If she's standing beside that man, then there is a reason." He turned toward the assembled warriors. "Prepare every rider. We leave immediately." One elder stepped forward in disbelief. "My Alpha." The High Alpha gave a direct command. Cedric's eyes hardened. "I served Draven for 20 years. I trusted him. But no ruler who threatens an innocent daughter deserves my loyalty." He drew his sword. "We ride for the mountains." Hundreds of Mooncrest warriors transformed into wolves. Within moments, the entire pack raced into the snow. For the first time in history, Mooncrest openly defied the High Alpha. Back at the observatory, the defenders were slowly being overwhelmed. Soren's shoulder had reopened, blood soaked through the bandages. Vaelora's sword arm trembled from exhaustion. Even Eldric had picked up an old spear to defend the remaining journals. The Raven Guard commander smiled. You cannot win. Soren looked around. He knew the commander was right. More soldiers continued pouring into the observatory. Then, a deep horn echoed through the mountains. Every soldier froze. Another horn answered from the valley below. The Raven Guard commander frowned. Impossible. A third horn sounded. This one carried the unmistakable call of Mooncrest Pack. Seconds later, the mountainside exploded with movement. Grey wolves charged through the snow. Mooncrest warriors crashed into the Raven Guard from behind. At their front, Alpha Cedric transformed mid-leap into a massive silver wolf before slamming directly into the enemy commander. The impact shattered a stone wall. The battle changed instantly. Vaelora stared in disbelief. "Father!" Cedric returned to human form, breathing heavily. He looked at Soren, then at his daughter. Finally he said, "You chose to protect him. I want to know why." Without hesitation, Vaelora handed him Lysara's journal. Cedric opened the first page. Then the second. Then the second. His hands began shaking. Each sentence destroyed another piece of the life he thought he understood. When he reached his wife's final entry, tears filled his eyes. For years he had believed illness had taken her. Now he learned she had died protecting the truth, while he unknowingly served the man responsible. Cedric slowly closed the journal. "I failed her." "No," Eldric answered gently. "You were deceived, just as the rest of us were." Cedric turned towards Soren. "My wife trusted your family. I intend to honor that trust." He lifted his sword. Mooncrest. Every warrior looked toward him. "We are not fighting for one pack. We are fighting for the truth." The mountain echoed with a united roar. Far above them, dark clouds gathered unnaturally. Lightning flashed across the sky. A deep voice echoed through the valley. "So, you finally opened your eyes." Every warrior turned. Standing atop a towering cliff overlooking the battlefield, High Alpha Draven appeared. He wore black ceremonial armor, unlike anything seen before. In his hand rested a long staff crowned with a fragment of glowing silver crystal. Behind him marched thousands of soldiers from packs across the continent. The final battle had arrived. Draven descended the mountains slowly. "I spent 30 years building this kingdom. I erased lies. I united weak packs. I brought order." Eldric stepped forward. "You brought fear." Draven smiled. "Fear creates obedience, and obedience creates peace." Soren raised his sword. "No, it creates slaves." The High Alpha laughed. "You still don't understand your purpose." He pointed the crystal staff towards Soren. "You were never meant to rule. You were born to unlock the moon core." Suddenly, the ground beneath the observatory began shaking. Ancient symbols carved into the mountainside ignited with brilliant silver light. The snow melted instantly. Hidden beneath centuries of stone, an enormous circular temple slowly rose from the earth. Every warrior stood frozen. The legendary temple of the first moon had finally revealed itself. At its center floated a radiant sphere of pure silver light. The moon core. It pulsed like a living heart. Draven's eyes burned with triumph. At last, he walked toward the altar. "No!" Soren charged forward. The two collided in the center of the temple. Their weapons clashed with explosive force. Silver energy burst outward, knocking warriors from their feet. Around them, the moon core glowed brighter with every passing second. Draven overpowered Soren, forcing him to one knee. "You cannot defeat destiny." Soren looked toward Vaelora, then toward the glowing moon core. Finally, he understood. It isn't choosing a ruler. It's testing a choice. Eldric's eyes widened. The covenant. Vaelora suddenly remembered an ancient sentence from her mother's journal. "Power belongs to those willing to surrender it, never those who seek to possess it." She ran toward Soren. Together, they reached the altar just as Draven extended his hand toward the moon core. Instead of trying to claim it, Vaelora placed both hands upon the glowing sphere. So much suffering, so many lies, it ends today. Soren covered her hands with his own. "If this destroys my bloodline, so be it. If this ends Alpha supremacy, then let it end." The moon core erupted. Blinding silver light flooded the temple. Every werewolf across the battlefield felt the same overwhelming wave of energy pass through them. Ancient magic shattered. The invisible force that had elevated one bloodline above another dissolved forever. Draven screamed as the stolen power left his body. His staff crumbled into dust. The temple shook violently, the moon core fractured. Then it exploded into countless silver fragments that drifted upward like stars before disappearing into the night sky. Silence followed. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, no supernatural force separated Alpha from Beta or Omega. Only character remained. Draven fell to his knees. His armies looked around in confusion. Without the ancient magic that had sustained his authority, his commands carried no mystical weight. One by one, his soldiers lowered their weapons. Not because they were defeated, because they were finally free to choose. Cedric stepped forward. "This war is over." No one argued. 6 months later, the scars of war had begun to heal. The old Alpha Council had been dissolved. Instead of 12 rulers competing for dominance, representatives from every pack gathered within a newly built hall known as the Council of Equals. Leadership was no longer inherited automatically. It was earned through wisdom, courage, and the trust of the people. Cedric declined every offer to become High Alpha. "There will never be another High Alpha," he said. "Only guardians." Eldric became the keeper of the restored archives, ensuring that the true history of the werewolves would never again be erased. The journals of Lysara Ashwin were copied and shared with every pack, honoring the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect the truth. As for Soren and Vaelora, they returned to the ruined chapel where their journey had truly begun. Spring flowers now covered the broken stones. The roof remained open to the sky. Soren smiled. "Do you regret saving a wounded rogue?" Vaelora laughed softly. "I didn't save a rogue. I found the man who reminded the world what it had forgotten." He took her hand. This time, no ancient magic flared. No glowing symbols awakened. There were no prophecies left to fulfill. Only two people standing beneath the same moon, free to choose each other. Above them, the full moon shone peacefully over a world no longer ruled by fear, proving that the greatest legacy is not power inherited through blood, but hope